What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. It is February 8th, 2024, and we have a lot to get into. A lot of today's show is going to be clearing things up. There's a lot of confusion going on right now between what happened to Nikki Haley in Nevada, and most of all, I want to talk about the failed Mayorkas impeachment, and I will let you know, it's not over, folks. You know, I know people are pissed off about the Mayorkas impeachment, the failure of that impeachment, but it's not over. And believe it or not, there's actually some strategy Republicans are playing when it comes to impeaching Mayorkas. Because, listen, there is great historical context with impeachment. And most of all, there's historical context in the grounds for impeachment. And one of those is high crimes and misdemeanors. And I want to emphasize the words high crimes. What is that? There's a lot of historical context with high crimes. There's a lot of debate about that. And not is there just debate about what is a high crime today, but the founders argued the same thing over 249 years ago. And so during the ratifying of the Constitution, I did some deep research into the arguments the framers were making during the ratification of the Constitution, and I found some very interesting conversations they were having, some very interesting arguments that I spent at least 2.5 hours reading last night. I dug into Federalist Paper 65, what James Madison had, or what Alexander Hamilton and James Madison had to say about impeachment, all that stuff. And so we want to get into that a little bit later, but first I want to get into this Nikki Haley Nevada debacle, because there is a lot of confusion about what's going on, and I do have to say, man, if I could give every person in Nevada a high five, I would right now, because this is hilarious. When I heard what had happened, as far as Nikki Haley being beat by none of the above on the ballot, I wanted to drop down rolling on the floor, man. So I want to talk about that because there is some confusion in regards to a primary, to a caucus, what just took place during that primary of Nikki Haley, what it all means, and why Nikki Haley is essentially refusing to bow out of this primary. There's a reason behind all this stuff, folks. Nikki Haley is being funded by Democrats. So, I mean, that should tell you everything you need to know right there about Nikki Haley. And so I found this great article from revolver.news. It says, the internet is rolling on the floor laughing over Nikki Haley's none of the above loss in Nevada. So Nikki Haley's probably scratching her head this morning trying to figure out what on earth went down in Nevada. Meanwhile, the rest of the internet is doubled over in laughter. Imagine being the only candidate on the ballot and still coming in second. You can bet Nikki's wondering who this none of the above character is and how they managed to beat her in a landslide. Let's dive into the hilarious head scratcher, shall we? So it all started with Nevada presidential primary, where Nikki Haley was the solo act on the ballot. Delegate-wise, it's a meaningless event. So President Trump decided to sit this one out so he could focus on the Nevada caucuses happening on Thursday, today. This is where everything went terribly and hilariously wrong for good old neocon Nikki. And then here is an article from USA Today. It says, it's an embarrassing setback. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley lost the Nevada GOP presidential primary Tuesday to none of these candidates. The loss is largely meaningless because former President Donald Trump decided to skip Nevada presidential preference primary and instead is expected to win the GOP-run caucuses Thursday night. That victory will give him all 26 of the state's delegates. But it's a symbolic hit to the former governor, who came in third in Iowa and second in New Hampshire and heads next to her home state's February 24th Republican primary. She captured almost 32% of the vote, while none claimed nearly 62%, with close to 2/3 of the state's votes counted. So I want to explain that. On the ballot, Nikki Haley was the only candidate on the ballot. There was two options. I think there may have been 3 options. The reason why they were doing this was Nikki Haley's campaign and all the corrupt people she has backing her campaign were like, you know what, Nikki Haley, why don't you do this? so that since you're the only candidate on the ballot, you'll be able to win this, and then we can push it out on the media, the Pravda propaganda machine, and say, oh, look how good Nikki Haley's doing. She's catching up to Donald Trump. She actually won in the state of Nevada. That would be the headlines. Because you see the media and all these fraudsters, all these bad people in running our government and running the establishment, they know that the American people are only pay attention long enough to read headlines. And so what they wanted to do was create headlines. That's what it's all about. Headlines win elections, folks. Unfortunately, that is our society. That is the breakdown of our society when it comes to low information voters. And this is why we have elections the way that we do. And I will argue this is exactly why we're all suffering from a Joe Biden election, because you just had way too many people that were uninformed and got their media and their news from headlines, didn't take the time to read about stuff, and just believed everything the media was telling them. And so this is why I've always said from the very beginning of the show, informed people make the best decisions and uninformed people make bad decisions. And what we're experiencing now is what happens when the majority of uninformed Americans make bad decision after bad decision. And there is no doubt electing Joe Biden was a grave mistake. And so what they were trying to do was they were trying to get Nikki Haley some headlines so that they can give the appearance, all right? It's optics. Everything's about optics in the fog of war. They wanted to give the appearance as if Nikki Haley was catching up to Donald Trump and that she still had a chance so that she can stay in longer. Their strategy, ladies and gentlemen, is for Nikki Haley to get as much support from Americans, whether that's independents, never Trumpers, and even Democrats. She's trying to harness as many voters as possible so that come election time, when it's time for her to bow out, she essentially holds all these voters hostage against Donald Trump. And she says, look, if you want to get the people that voted for me, you better make me vice president. And so that's what she's trying to do. And I mean, it's not a new strategy. It's certainly a strategy that's been used lots of times in the past. And so Donald Trump and his campaign will have to make a decision. Do we want her voters or not? Is it beneficial for us to bring on Nikki Haley and make her vice president? Is she going to increase our counts? Is she going to bring on a lot of voters? When you look at it from that point of view, from that strategy, then you'll start to understand why Nikki Haley is still in the race. They're trying to come in second. They're trying to hold voters hostage in order to get a vice presidential seat with Donald Trump. And the reason why the establishment is supporting Nikki Haley and the Democrats, the reason why the Washington Swamp is supporting Nikki Haley is because they want an insider. They want to tie Donald Trump down with somebody like Nikki Haley. They want to have Nikki Haley in there sabotaging Donald Trump every chance she can get, and so on and so forth. So Nikki Haley is not in this for the betterment of the country. She is in there as a saboteur, constantly stabbing him in the back, and never, ever think that Nikki Haley won't try and get Donald Trump impeached or get him arrested or whatever the case is so that she can take the presidency. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to, once they get Nikki Haley in there as the saboteur, then they'll come up with articles of impeachment. They'll come up with some type of congressional investigation, much like they did in Donald Trump's first term. And then if they just so happen to get rid of Donald Trump, whatever type of operation they have, then they would have somebody like Nikki Haley in there to make sure that the establishment stays the establishment. And so that's what they're doing. That's what Nikki Haley's campaign strategy is. That's why she hasn't dropped out yet. So I just wanted to explain that to you because I think once you understand where they're coming from and why Nikki Haley hasn't dropped out yet, now you know. And I don't think she's going to drop out for a long time. I think as long as people are funding her, which they are, mostly Democrats. And the crazy thing is she admits, she says she's being funded by Democrats. And so the mission is clear, what they're trying to do. But I don't think Donald Trump's campaign's going to fall for it. And because of this story we're talking about, because that she lost to none of the above when she was the only person on the ballot, just reaffirms to Donald Trump voters, and most of all Donald Trump's campaign, is that Nikki Haley doesn't have the support anyways. She is not worth bringing her on board as vice president if she's not going to bring any voters. And it's clear as day she's not bringing any voters. And so that's why this was, funny. It really was funny, but this was a big uppercut to Nikki Haley and her campaign. And honestly, I want to say she's going to drop out soon. But like I said, as long as she's getting funded, she'll stay in there and kneecap Donald Trump as much as she can. So this should tell everybody that the Republicans and the Democrats, this is not an election of Republicans versus Democrats. This is the machine versus the people. There's no other conclusion to come to. When you have a candidate, a Republican candidate, working with Democrats, being funded by Democrats, and share the same MO as Democrats, which is stop Donald Trump at all costs, then you know that this is not a Republican versus Democrat thing. This is the people versus the machine. Nikki Haley is a GOP swamp creature. She's an establishment plant. She is only there because the establishment seen numbers in her, seen something to make her the person that tries to bring Donald Trump down. And this is what we're talking about. This is why I've been saying from the very beginning, this election has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It has everything to do with the establishment versus the people. And so this was a big hit to Nikki Haley's campaign last night. Big. So the article goes on, no surprise here, the internet is absolutely alive for this drama, practically rolling on the floor laughing. There, you know what's off. Here is just some posts from X that are actually pretty brutal. So among the wildflowers on X, she says, just remember, if you ever lose at something, it's never going to be as bad as losing to no one, like Nikki Haley did in Nevada primary. Damn! Yeah. And then here is Joey Manarino. I actually follow him on X. He said last night Nikki Haley lost the Nevada primary despite being the only candidate on the ballot. Literally. Trump wasn't on the ballot and none of the above got 60% of the vote while Nikki got just 33%. If this isn't a sign to just drop out and get back to life, what is? That's why I wanted to clear up what I did. I want people to understand why Nikki Haley isn't dropping out. She knows she's not going to win the presidency. This is not a race for the presidency. This is for the establishment to get a plant, to get a connection to the inside. And so they're trying to build as much support for Nikki Haley as possible so that when it comes time for Donald Trump to pick VP, they have to calculate, okay, if we bring on Nikki Haley, she's going to bring this much support. If we bring on this person, they're going to bring on this many voters. Although I will say that campaigns in the past usually don't include that into their calculations, and they say that vice presidents hardly have any impact on the election as far as, voters. But this is a much different election, folks. So I don't know. Donald Trump has already said he is not picking Nikki Haley for VP, and in some cases, the people in the inner circle of Donald Trump and the Trump campaign say he's already picked a VP. I personally think it's going to be somebody like a J.D. Vance. He certainly would be a freaking rock star as far as getting things done and having the wherewithal to know how to get it done. I think J.D. Vance is an excellent pick. I'm still on the Tucker Carlson bus, which, did you hear about all this drama about him going to interview Vladimir Putin? And the left mainstream Pravda media is trying to label him as a traitor, as for, treason is what they're saying. Because he went over to Moscow, Russia to interview the opponent in this Russia-Ukraine war so that the American people have both sides of the story, they're calling him a traitor. Okay? So Get that, folks. You're not supposed to know why we are spending hundreds of billions of dollars fighting Russia and Vladimir Putin. You're not supposed to know that. Don't even ask. You're not even allowed to talk to him. You're not even allowed to know why. This is the problem that we're facing right now with the military-industrial complex. And I want to get into that, and we will probably at a later segment. But again, I'm on the Tucker Carlson for VP. The only problem with Tucker is he just doesn't have insider experience. He doesn't have experience with Congress. He doesn't have experience with bills and laws and procedures. So that could be a big setback because, listen, we want somebody that can, as soon as Donald Trump takes his hand off the Bible, they can hit the beach running. That is what we want. And this is the reason for Project 2025 and why I signed up for Project 2025. And I have learned so much in the last 2 months. The life in DC is nothing like we think it is. It is not. I mean, it is so big, so swampy, so bureaucratical. It is shocking to most people that don't know about the inside workings of DC. And so having someone like Tucker Carlson is not a setback, but I could see it being a weight. I could see it being like a ball and chain on Tucker Carlson and the VP position. We want somebody as VP that can essentially split the strategy up in two parts, essentially split the battlefield. And you have the vice president take one end and Donald Trump take the other end. And that, I think, is the only way we can get as much as we can done. That is the only way to maximize efficiency in a single term, is have a VP that is essentially going to be able to split the workload of Donald Trump and actually get things done. And so he's going to need somebody with insider experience with passing bills and laws, executive orders, coalitions and stuff like that. So I think somebody like J.D. Vance would be great. I think Byron Donalds would be great. There's a lot, but Nikki Haley is not one of them. We don't need a vice president that is going to sabotage Donald Trump and his presidency. Like, that is the last freaking thing we need, all right? And you can argue that Mike Pence did that at the end. Like, Mike Pence was a huge disappointment to me in the end of all this. As soon as January 6th happened, and I won't lie, I think Mike Pence was in on this strategy. I think Mike Pence is looking to get a board seat at Boeing or Raytheon, and I think that the Washington establishment came to him and said, hey, look, this is what you need to do, and, this is what we'll do. I think his lawyers got a hold of him. I think his insiders got a hold of him. His staffers got a hold of him, and he, in my eyes, is a turncoat. Mike Pence, which is unfortunate because he's from my home state, Indiana, Mike Pence is a turncoat. I don't know, did he lie? But the thing is when the American people needed Mike Pence the most, he turned his back on us. He betrayed his fellow Americans. And that's how I see Mike Pence. And so we don't need somebody like that. And that's exactly what Nikki Haley is, only worse. It's worse because we know Nikki Haley is a deep state swamp creature. We know Nikki Haley is a funded by Democrats, would have, a open access to coming after Donald Trump. It would essentially destroy Donald Trump's last term as president and probably wouldn't be able to get anything done. She is a fake, phony fraud, folks. And so Nikki Haley cannot be trusted and she cannot be VP. This is great. You had Kash Patel out there in Nevada campaigning for this, knocking on doors, essentially saying, look, I want all Nevadians, I think that's what they're called. I want everybody in Nevada that's going to vote in this primary to circle none of the above. And listen, he couldn't have got to all of them. There was a lot of people that voted. There was I think there was over 100,000 people that voted. So surely he couldn't have gotten to all of them. And so you had a lot of people on their own volition circled or bubbled in none of these candidates as an option on their own. So what does that tell you? Nikki Haley is a fraud. Nikki Haley should drop out, but just like I said earlier, she won't. And now you know why. So that's the story going on with Nevada. Nikki Haley Donald Trump and the actual real primary is going to be today, where Nikki Haley's not even on the ballot. And so their plan backfired in their face because now they can't get the headline they want for Nikki Haley. You know, they wanted the headline saying Nikki Haley catching up to Donald Trump. Nikki Haley wins primary in Nevada, even though it was like a fake primary and doesn't matter. They don't care because they know nobody's going to read further than the headline. And so they count on, listen, folks, these people count on you being uninformed. They really do. They have to have low information voters in order for Democrats to win. This is what they do. They've relied on low information voters for decades, because once you learn about Democrats, once you open your eyes and you grow wise to Democrats and their bad policies and philosophy, then you go conservative. You know that saying, it's like what happens to a Democrat when they grow wise? They go conservative. That is what happens. And so they absolutely depend on low information voters in elections. And that is why I started this podcast. That's why you have so many other conservative radio hosts and podcasts and just free, you know, we're using this platform, we're using our First Amendment to inform our listeners. Why? Because that's exactly what the framers wanted. The framers understood we were going to be in times like this. And so they knew that freedom of the press, freedom of speech was going to be vital for a proper oversight of a government. What they didn't count on, and maybe they did, was the press being used and owned 99% by the government. And so the media is essentially an apparatus for the administrative state. And so they planned on that too. The framers of our country were geniuses, man. They thought of everything. They argued, they debated, they talked about these things. They pulled so much history. They pulled the best from governments all throughout human history, all around the world. And they got rid of the worst. And a lot of the laws that we have today, in fact, most of our system is based off the ancient Roman Republic. I mean, this is very, very obvious when you start reading the texts of the framers, their arguments, their debates that they were having, the Federalist Papers. It's very obvious that these people were referencing ancient Rome and and Great Britain, the king, the monarchy. They pulled some stuff from there. But their biggest fear of all was tyranny. This is the point I think a lot of people miss, is that the framers of this country just got done fighting a war against an evil tyrant. And so their biggest reason behind the creation of this country was to never have the rise of tyranny again. And so everything that they based their rules and laws off of was based from the fact that they were trying to defeat tyranny. They were trying to prevent a tyrannical overtake of the country. And so you start to notice this when you read into the Federalist Papers, when you read into the Constitution. It was all about separation of powers. They never wanted any one person or any one branch to have too much power. And what we're witnessing right now is this fourth branch of government that was created, okay, by the evildoers at bay. They created this fourth branch of government, and that's what's running our country now. And so to me, that is tyrannical. That is a tyranny. This is how they were able to force the shots into the arms of millions of people that did not want them, was through this fourth branch of government, which you could call it the deep state, the bureaucracy, the swamp, the DC establishment, whatever you want to call it. But regardless, it is a single branch of government that has way too much power and was never intended to be created by the framers of this country. And so what we are fighting against is exactly what the framers wanted us to fight against. This fourth branch of government, this tyranny that we're watching take over our country. These people were off the hook when it came to free speech. And so as podcasters, as radio hosts, they would be extremely proud of all of us for doing exactly what they told us to do. They gave us this strategy. They gave us this plan. And they enshrined it into the constitutional amendments. Your First Amendment right, your Second Amendment right, all these things are there to protect us and to empower the citizenry. We have the power. All the power of this government, all the power in this country lies within the people. And that's exactly what they wanted. And so they want people to be informed as much as possible. If the framers of this country knew that the citizenry was as uninformed as it is, which, but they knew it was because it's basic human instinct. They knew what society is going to be like. They knew the potentials of society. They knew all this stuff was going to happen. They can't possibly know down to a detail, but they definitely knew this country was going to be in this position at one point or the other. And so they gave us freedom of speech so I, as a content creator, as a podcaster, as somebody that researches news, culture, politics, as somebody that is completely submerged into this stuff, because personally I feel like it's my civic duty, they wanted me to be able to inform my fellow Americans. And that's exactly what I'm doing. But Democrats, they don't like that. This is why they are the party of censorship. They can't have informed voters. And informed citizenry is the most dangerous thing to the Democrat Party. Because once people catch on to what the Democrats' ideas and their philosophies and their goals are and their agenda, once people know that and they see it, they don't vote for them anymore. And that's why Democrats are trying to fight for lower and lower voting ages. Because why? Because younger people are more likely to be uninformed with politics. They're more likely to be inexperienced with life. Wisdom. They lack wisdom. That's what you can boil it all down to. The more you grow wise, the more likely you are to vote for conservative. Or not just conservative, but the more likely you are to not vote for Democrats and their bad ideas. And so that was a way longer clip than I actually intended it to be. I wanted to get into the Mayorkas thing. We're not going to have time, but I'm going to do it on the very next segment. This went on entirely way too long, which is my fault. I'm trying to explain. I spent way too long trying to explain to you what the strategy was behind Nikki Haley and her campaign and why she isn't dropping out. And so I kind of screwed that up. But I'm going to talk about the Mayorkas impeachment vote on the next segment, and why I think most likely he's going to get impeached. And it's probably going to be next week. And I'll explain to you why and how I came to that conclusion based off I have some audio from Congressman Andy Biggs and Matt Gaetz. And I dove into the Federalist Papers last night. I read from a framer that had a lot to do with impeachment. In fact, he was one of the biggest proponents to impeachment and what defines high crimes. And so I want to go into who that framer was, and he wasn't in the Federalist Papers, but he most certainly had a huge influence on our Constitution and the ratification of the Constitution back in 1788. So I wanted to talk about that. But we're not going to have time, so I'll talk about it on the next segment. So make sure you tune into that segment. If you guys want to follow the show, please follow the show on Rumble. I post all the episodes there every day, and you can follow me on all social media platforms. What I usually just tell people is just go in your search engine. I don't like promoting Google, but go into your search engine and type in Stephen Tauriello Show. It is Stephen with a V, Tauriello. Just look up my name and you will find everything you need to know. You'll find my episodes. You'll find all the platforms we're on. And so if you could, please, I'd appreciate it. Follow the show. And most of all, share the show with your friends and family. How we were talking about an informed citizenry is the best to have proper oversight of the government. The only way to inform your fellow citizenry is by sharing content like this, is sharing the show. Inform your fellow Americans, because it is vital to understand what we're watching and what we're going through right now so that we can have effective countermeasures to all this stuff. It gets pretty confusing in the fog of war, and we are no doubt in a multi-front war right now between culture, free speech, religion, and so many different fronts to this war. So In the fog of war, it is best that people have a clear sight of the main objective, and that objective is getting our country back from this corrupt, rogue fourth branch of government that's been created under our feet, and we didn't even know it. So, again, I'd appreciate it. Follow the show, leave a comment, and as always, I want you guys to have a good day, have a great week. I'll talk to you guys here in a little bit. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good one. Bye-bye.